Hey everyone, Jeff McElrain here, and today I'm going to talk about 10 records that really made a huge impact on me from the second I first heard them play. These are not in any order, I'm just going through them. Just 10 records that you may or may not know, but ones that really influenced my guitar playing. Right off the top, as a young lad, was Animals by Pink Floyd. It is still my favorite Pink Floyd record. I think David Gilmour's playing is absolutely spectacular on it. I think it's a real high point. So is Wish You Were Here, but for me, Animals is the most guitar-heavy record. I always come back to that. The new remaster, I think, is really great. I love both versions. Obviously, I'd heard something like Dark Side of the Moon first, but when I was young and it came out in 1977, I was aware of it afterwards. I got into Pink Floyd through my older brother, Steve, who would listen to a lot of these records, and I would latch on to some of them. So Pink Floyd, Animals is still one of the greatest rock and roll records and guitar records of all time. Now, if you agree with me on thinking David Gilmour is one of the greatest guitar players of all time, you might like a course of mine that I have on sale right now called The Art of Melodic Soloing. And that's where I talk about how someone like David Gilmour crafts his guitar solos to play those perfect, great, memorable solos every single time. Believe me, it's not by divine intervention. Someone like David Gilmour practiced a lot. He knew what notes were in what chord and when to play them at the right time. And that's what I help you discover in the course, The Art of Melodic Soloing, on sale using the link above or below. Next up is the Michael Schenker Group, the first solo record from Michael Schenker after he left UFO. I'm still a massive Michael Schenker fan. When I first heard this record, it was like that guitar player was telling me exactly what I wanted to hear. His phrasing, his vibrato, his bends, everything about Michael Schenker, the lyricism, the mix of that neoclassical fusion stuff with straight-on great rock guitar playing technique, just out of this world record. And if you're not familiar with Michael Schenker, the Michael Schenker Group, definitely check that one out. Now we come to Blizzard of Oz by Ozzy Osbourne. Of course, Randy Rhoads on guitar. I was a big Black Sabbath fan prior to this, but when I first heard Mr. Crowley, my head kind of exploded. It was one of those moments as a kid I remember having on cassette, and I had it on my Walkman, showing my age when the record came out, and I put it on, and I had the wrong side on first, and I thought Mr. Crowley was the first thing. And everything, you know those moments where everything kind of falls into place, and you think, this record was made for me. And that's the thing about all these records. I feel like all these records were made just for me, and I'm sure you feel that way too. That's why we love the bands we do so much. Like Pink Floyd, probably my favorite band, that or Zeppelin. That and Zeppelin. At those records, it's like, this was just made for me. But, of course, a lot of people feel that way. Avia Musicam by Eric Johnson. Now, the first time I heard Eric Johnson was from the Flexi Disc in Guitar Player magazine. I think Cliffs of Dover, for me and many other people, was the real watershed moment, and then seeing the Austin City Limits, and then when his instructional video came out. But I always came back to Avia Musicam more so as a record, to this day too. Maybe Venus Isle maybe I like Venus Isle a little bit more now, but for me, Avia Musicam, when it came out, was one of those records that I wore out. Or can I wear out a CD? It might have been on a CD at that point. It definitely wore out the cassette. I can't remember, but there's not much to say about Eric Johnson that hasn't been said before. Really innovative. The chord playing, as much as the lead playing, just opened up a ton of doors for me that I'm still trying to unlock to this day. Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force. I had the demo tape that he had sent to Guitar Player. I sent away for that. I'd been listening to him for a little while. There was a local college radio station that would play him, a metal station, WSOU in New Jersey, and he would play the demos. And then, of course, the Steeler record came out. But when the Rising Force record came out, I can't forget Alcatraz as well, who I saw Yngwie with Alcatraz opening for Ted Nugent before the Rising Force record came out. So I was a big fan, but the Rising Force record, that was the one that really solidified him as one of the greatest guitar heroes of the 80s for sure, and going on forward. Whether you like his playing or not, I don't care. I love his guitar playing, especially on this record in that period. You cannot beat his tone, his phrasing, and his vibrato. The guy is completely unique. We know that he's got his backgrounds in Ritchie Blackmore and etc. and Uli John Roth, but he really put it together. And that record, to this day, I still love it, can still listen to it. Yngwie J. Malmsteen's Rising Force. Fresh Cream by Cream. Now, it's not the first Cream record that I was made aware of. That would be something like Sunshine Your Love from local New York City radio. They would play that a lot. Badge, things like that. Tales of Brave Ulysses, Crossroads. Those are all great tunes, and I still love those, of course. But when I first heard Fresh Cream, I don't know what age I was, that was something that really, really grabbed me. In particular, Spoonful off of that, which is still one of my favorite Cream tracks. Just the way Clapton plays on that, the band interacts, the whole thing. The huge guitar tone on that record is just still, to me to this day, one of my favorite guitar sounding records. And I love the tunes on it. So, Fresh Cream by Cream. Next up would be Robben Ford's Talk to Your Daughter record. When I first heard this, I was at college at Berkeley, and this was once again one of those records that when I heard it, I was like, this is it. This is what I love. This is amazing. What is this? And so to this day, I still feel that way about Robben's playing. One of the most influential guitar players of the last 30 years for guitar players who are into blues and blues rock. There's the people who are post-Robben and pre-Robben when it comes to this mixture of a bit of jazzy stuff, a little more modern sounding, with traditional blues. Often overlooked is Robben Ford's rhythm guitar playing, which is absolutely spectacular. I know by sharing stages with them that it is something to behold, especially in person. So, one of the classic records of all time for guitar players is Robben Ford's Talk to Your Daughter. Now the next one, I'm going to put 2 in because I couldn't decide, and I know I was trying to keep the list to 10, but I'm going to make a 10A and 10B. So 10A would be Mike Stern's Upside Downside. If you're not familiar with this record, it's really great. It's his solo record after he left playing with Miles Davis. It might sound a little dated here and there production-wise. It's just of the time, but the guitar playing is still amazing, and the songwriting is so great on there. Jaco Pastorius is on that record. David Sanborn. There's tons of great musicians on that record. And the tune Mood Swings is a blues, and it's got Jaco on bass, and it's just such a great tune. Upside Downside, the title track. Introduction to Mike Stern's quirky songwriting. Upside Downside by Mike Stern. Definitely get it if you don't have it. 10B would be IOU by Alan Haldsworth. Still one of my favorite Haldsworth records. I first got the record at a record store. One of my friends said, "Oh, you should get this." And I was like, "Okay." And I just bought it and I went home. I had no idea what I was listening to. It didn't make much sense to me at the time, other than I knew it was really cool and I really, really dug it. But I had no idea of the complexity of what he was doing until I started to kind of grow with the record and learn more on the guitar and realize that this is completely from another planet. The record really stands the test of time. I can still put it on and listen to it. It's really stripped down. I believe it was recorded pretty quickly, and it sounds it in the sense of it's not overproduced. It really sounds pretty live. The performances are really, really amazing. Highly recommend IOU by Alan Haldsworth. although I can't really play any of that stuff really well, he did have a big influence on my guitar playing. Next up is There and Back by Jeff Beck. Now, is it the best Jeff Beck record? I don't know, but it was the one that I first got. I was getting into guitar, in my teens, and people had said, "Oh, you got to check out Jeff Beck." And I think my brother had some stuff, but the first record I bought was There and Back. And I remember putting it on Star Cycle. It was just the coolest thing ever. And the final piece, the way he plays on that, all those tunes, his guitar tone in that record too is pretty raw, which I like a lot. I like him done everything, but it was one of those guitar players, once again, a bit like Halsworth, is I loved what I was hearing, but I didn't understand the level of complexity of what I was hearing until I started to try to figure some of the stuff out. And I started to go like, what is going on? And how's he doing this? If there's a guitar player I'd say was maybe the single most influence on my guitar playing, it would probably be Jeff Beck, me and a lot of other people. So much to the point where I really had to make a concerted effort to try not to sound like a guy who's trying to sound like Jeff Beck. And finally, Band of Gypsies by Jimi Hendrix. I would say this is my favorite Hendrix record. People could argue this, but because of Machine Gun, it is one of the greatest performances ever recorded, anytime ever. That moment in time, that solo they did, the whole performance of Machine Gun as a band really blew my mind. And I remember when I was younger, I'd heard Hendrix a lot on the radio, and I had some friends who were big Hendrix fans, but I never got into it because for me, I was hearing Purple Haze and Foxy and Fire and Hey Joe. Now, of course, they're all amazing, but if you grew up hearing them, I didn't understand how amazing they were because they had been around for a while, those songs. It's just something I'd grown up hearing. I just didn't quite get it. And at that point, I was into guys like Schenker and Jeff Beck and Randy Rhoads and more of the metal guys, leaning more towards that. And I didn't quite get the Hendrix thing that much. So I was into Robin Trower, funnily enough, Bridge of Sighs, so that's kind of an interesting thing. Still love Robin Trower. And then I was at the store, and it was like a supermarket, and I bought the cassette of The Nice Price of Band of Gypsies. And I had a cool car stereo in my Nova in New Jersey, and I had a lot of hair. I put it in, and it was the hairs on my arms went up, and I was like, now I get it. And since that moment in time, Jimi Hendrix cannot be overrated. And that performance, particularly of Machine Gun, was, and still is, one of the most impactful musical experiences of my whole life. Now, of course, this is just a list of records that influenced me. I'm not writing a top 10, what's the best. These are the ones that influenced me. I would love to hear some of the records that influenced you down below, and I'm sure I'd agree with most of them. This is also not my list of my favorite records of all time. Like, for instance, The Cure Disintegration is one of my favorite records of all time. But is it one of my favorite guitar records of all time? Well, actually, yeah, maybe it is, but it didn't influence me as much as these records. Animals by Pink Floyd is one of my favorite rock records of all time, and probably one of the greatest rock records of all time. If I look at some of the other ones, are they ones that I go back to and listen to on a regular basis? Probably not, but they're ones that I know hold near and dear to my heart as a guitar player. So put your choices down below as well. I'd love to hear them. Once again, I'm Jeff McElroy. If you like my channel, please hit the like and subscribe button. Go over and check out JM Guitar Lessons and check out my Art of Melodic Soloing course on sale for a special price above or below.